Content over everything.
Corner, of course.
So,
but I want to come back to, if I may,
let's go back to the topic
just to wave the flag, because we're talking about how, you know,
sorry about we kind of went off topic for a bit.
Talking about real men and about sissies. So I want to raise a flag here for those of us who don't fit into that. I was going to say stereotypes, it's a cliche, but you know, there are a number of us around, gay men, for example. And I'm much more masculine than some gay men I know, believe me. But those gay men who are more effeminate are not doing it because they want attention or because they're somehow being corrupted, because that's just their nature. You just check their word for it. Because often they really don't want to be like that, but just how they are. And they get picked on, they get ostracized. Now, we need to be able to, if we're civilized human beings, which we are, we need to be able to also accept that they're part of the human family. And not say, well, you're less of a man because you don't behave like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, you know what I mean? To give a silly example.
Can I just clarify something, Paul? When I say that people are behaving in a masculine way, I'm talking about men behaving how they naturally do. Now, if a man is effeminate, he's behaving naturally to what he is. But I'm talking about when a man is, you know, a school kid, little boy, 14, who's a little bit boisterous, and then he's like pumped with drugs because he's behaving like a boy, and then he's kind of ostracized, and he's like, oh, he's a brute, he's going to turn into like the patriarchy, and he's going to do that. It's wrong, because you're then putting undue pressure on these boys that are then drugged up, and this is why you've got such a big level of suicide among youngsters.
No, that's fair.
Especially later on in their life as well. I mean, and that's another point I'd like to mention as well, is, look, we get that there's very feminine children that are boys, and we also get that there's very masculine females that are girls.
So-called tomboys.
Yeah, Tommy boy. But from what I remember when I was brought up in class, they had their place in society. Like, for example, the feminine boys wouldn't play with the so-called tough boy example. They would play with the girls. And to be honest with you, I can't remember a time when we sort of like ostracized them and belittled them. We just, as kids, we thought, you know what, that's what they're doing, that he's happy playing there. We're happy begging the praise, kneecaps off of each other, and that was it. But what's happened now, in my view, is that we're told, no, the child that wants to now play with the girls has to come and play with the boys, and the boys that are all around have got to treat him like the girls have treated him, and that to me is where the problem lies. Just let nature take its course. It's a different story. And I'm all up for this, for the kid that is hitting the so-called soft kid, that society has a beautiful way of dealing with that. You know, you send a letter to their mum saying, look, we're slightly worried about the kid, and then the mum or the father could sit down with the kid and say, look, son, there's some kids that don't grow up to be married. You know, they start breaking it down a little bit more. You know, give them the attention that they need. But it's what I've noticed, that just because of that one kid behaving this way, the whole classroom now gets to be set down in that circle that teacher does, and has to explain to them, no, that I don't agree with. You know, let the little kid play with the girls. Who cares? Who cares?
I mean, if you go back 20 years, 30 years when I was like, there was none, I mean, you had effeminate boys, rowdy kids. No, we didn't do anything with them. We just like, oh, they got told off a bit, might have got suspended. But I think there's too much control, which is what's causing the younger generation to become much more.
Another dimension to it that I don't know. Maybe I'm being very esoteric here, but there is also.
You might want to explain that to our COA viewers.
No, they'll be fine.
A lot of them might want to get to the Google.
Only joking. One of the things that we're witnessing, or these are symptoms that you're witnessing, an intrinsic conflict between materialistic values versus older, more humanistic values, and that's expressing itself in a way that take the gender wage gap. If you think about what's happening with the gender wage gap, because it is important for women to give birth and have children, that's how societies grow. But at the same time, they are entitled to engage in material ways. They need to eat, they need to have a wage. So how do you combine the two? Technically, you can't, because having children from a materialistic point of view is actually one of the most harmful things you can do to yourself, both biologically and financially. So now you have a woman who has to make a reasonable choice between, do I have children, expand years of my time, reduce my social capital, reduce my career and earning capability, or do I make more money, potentially earn more respect, and adopt more masculine traits to become richer, wealthier, and healthier? And if you think about it specifically from that point of view that actually outlines a lot of the issues that we're facing. Is that we've become extremely materialistic in our values, and no one will dispute.
I'm very unhappy as well.
Very much so.
Very unhappy.
It's unnatural to put the profit motive over more intrinsic human ideals, and that's what we're doing. And no one is going to no one's going to argue against it.
And there's a very simple cure for all of this as well. I don't want to sound horrible, but there's a lot of things that we don't address. Like, for example, the wage gap. Like, the wages, forget the gap, wages is more of the bigger problem. Like, I see people that you're going to work for £7.50 an hour, example, and you're going to bring up a child that's going to eat right, live in a safe place. This is fairy tale nonsense. You understand me? And it's designed this way as well, so we do get this problem. You understand me? Like before, like my dad, I can remember what my father's wages used to be, and I look at exactly what we're getting as men, and it's exactly the same. You're like, and the price of houses have gone up, the price of transport's gone up.
And that's adding to the pressure of young men.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's why women have to go out and work.
Almost impossible to kind of attain what society wants them to do. So if they're not running around in a like a nice car, or they got nice shoes and stuff like that.
It's not just that. It's that if you think about who the men have to compete with now, if you're competing exclusively with a male,
I'll stand beside.
I don't know. I'm going to burn the camera, man.
You're right. Come here. You stand here. I'll stop placing Paul.
Sorry.
You're right, Paul. Yeah.
I'm fine.
All right, so we could all.
So if you think about the competitive pool now, if you're talking about an exclusively male set of competition and a small number of women, now that's multiplied by 2. So instead of me competing with 3 guys, I have to compete with 3 guys and 3 girls. And to make matters even more interesting, the women are actually doing quite well.
They're
significantly more performant in university, significantly more performant university education as well as professional. So the opportunities for men actually reduce over time. The better, and that's exactly
because what role is there for a man now? If you look at what there was and what there is now,
it's a world of difference.
I mean,
it's a world of difference.
My kind of social, even in my household, women got better jobs than me, and so as a man, it does feel a little bit. You feel a little bit emasculated. I don't now, because as I've got older, I've gone through it. I'm happy with what I'm doing, but it was when I was younger, which caused a lot of depression. Oh, my sister's driving a beautiful car, and I'm like, unemployed, and so that kind of emasculation of the man, like I felt like I wasn't man enough, can cause depression for men, and so we got a lot of kind of like stigma if we don't feel like we're performing in a particular fashion.
I think it's designed though, without a doubt. To be honest with you, I don't think what we're in at the moment is anything to do with coincidence at all. It's been designed this way, so we are in this situation where we're begging the phrase. It's like the gentleman said, jobs that are not male orientated. It's had to accept that women need to be in that. I know lots of
like
women that don't. Yeah, like for example, they don't want to do engineering.
But women are good at biology and stuff. So do you start putting men into biology?
Caring, loving,
I don't know. Maybe a woman wants to give it their. We're not talking about women.
Any
we're just talking
females
about.
want to jump
We're talking
in?
about men
Like,
and depression.
Oh, right. I was going to say, we've got a whole load of men talking about women's
But
issues.
think about it from a slightly different point of view. If you have more women in the market earning, making jobs, that's more customers. That's more people to buy your stuff. So it's about enlarging the market. So there is a dimension of materialism in there that it's actually, if I'm a producer or I'm a company owner, it is better for me to have more customers. Hey, maybe we should bring the women on board. And you know what? Maybe they should get some high-paying jobs because they pay for more stuff. Let's get them into engineering. That's where all the money is. And it's about making the money work. And you're talking about the economic stagnation. That is by design, because if you think about that old loop where if your wages keep going up, how are the companies going to operate? How will you be able to buy goods if the cost of making those goods becomes impossible to pay for?
I will question how far we can, as a species, as a human, as a Homo sapiens, we can, by sheer political will, not just transcend but deny our evolutionary heritage. Because if we are, as a species, going back literally, how old are we? 100,000, 200,000 years old, depending on how you do it. Men and women have, in all cultures, I understand, throughout the world, throughout history. It's not just a Western thing. It's the Far East. It's in, Australia and so on. That men and women have had very distinct and different roles. So the man will go out and be the hunter-gatherer, and the woman will have the children, and lots of children. because she has to ensure the survival of the group. This is not some kind of anti-feminist state. You have to, infant mortality was extremely high then, and it was here until quite recently. So
funny story to support what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know about intrauterine cancer in women. So apparently, they found out back in 2009 that the birth control pill can actually succeed in preventing cancer. Why is that? Because if you go to more primitive societies that don't have periods as regularly as women in Western societies, the fact that they give birth multiple times is actually a deterrent towards developing uterine cancer. So funny, what we're experiencing today with the uterine cancer epidemic is because women aren't giving birth. It's a byproduct of that.
But my question is a more political one. That can we, particularly in the West, this is a Western ideology really, feminism has come from here. Can we transcend and just act as free agents?
I've got to disagree with that.
Okay.
Because third wave feminism is a Western ideology.
That's what I meant.
So we need to say third wave or feminazis.
Well, feminazis is a bit pejorative.
Yeah, I know, but I call them feminazis because they're crazy. But
no, this is a point. I'm talking about the most recent manifestation of feminism,
beyond 1990,
which sees gender as completely, I think, divorced from biology and our genetics, where we can, in a sense, invent ourselves as male and female as we wish. It's kind of what Freud would have called polymorphous perversity. And I think this is so detached from our biological and genetic inheritance as a species as to be a fantastic, unworkable thing. It's almost a bourgeois kind of dilettantianism that we, in the last stage in our civilization, can indulge in this as if we really can get away with it. But we pay a price on numerous grounds. Demographically, of course, the West is going into free fall. We're not replacing the generations at all. I forget what the latest statistics are. The places like Italy and Germany, they're not replacing generations, so you have to suck in a lot of people from the third world simply to keep these economies going.
You need three per household to sustain.
But also other things, again, very un-PC things like abortion. I mean, I'm pro-life. We have mass abortion on demand in the United States and Britain, and also this is because women can compete presumably in the labour market in the same way men, because men and women are just interchangeable, they're just identical. Despite what our evolutionary heritage tells us, we are hardwired as men and women to be different and have different roles. So we have abortion on demand, we have demographic catastrophe in the West. And we also have, I'll leave it at that. There are other consequences as well. But these are costs that we are paying as a society. And they are our undoing. They're our Achilles heel. Because if our demographics are collapsing, we can't continue forever.
And as well as that, our children are not getting raised right as well. Like, I don't want to be nasty. If you're sending the mother, I genuinely feel this is the case. You send mum to work, and you got a perfect stranger raising your kid. You understand me? They're not bringing the child up in your culture.
And when they go home, they put them in front of the TV.
Yeah, you put them in front of. There's none of this. You're getting their mums to work way too many hours, way too many hours, and then you wonder why this child's not balanced. Well, no, begging the phrase, shit Sherlock. The child, how is he going to be knowing how to raise himself? He learns from his peers. He doesn't learn from CBeebies or Teletubbies and these kind of babysitters. But that's exactly it. And I genuinely say it's still to do with the wages. Like men's raises it's pathetic. You look at me and you're like, what are you going to do? Are you going to pay for the travel? Are you going to pay for the food? Or are you going to pay for the roof over your head? Because you can't do all three of them. You can't. And that is sadly when father looks at mother and goes, darling, you need to go out. And then 17 years later, you got a kid that, no offence, is like we see today. The streets of Hackney are the babysitters to these children or wherever the depraved area that they're coming from. And they learn from people, instead of their mums and dads to be correct, they're learning from gangsters and drug dealers. I mean,
can I now be controversial? Because hey, it's a speaker's corner.
How about
that's a good enough reason.
That's a good enough reason. Let's trigger someone. Let's trigger everyone. No, I think the most fundamental freedom and right that we're denied in the West is the right to be traditional.
Thank you.
We're not allowed to be traditional. It's demonized. It's deconstructed by postmodernists and the followers of Foucault. But who are the communities? And this is the controversial one. Who are the communities in Britain, say, who are maintaining against social pressure the traditional values? We say no one, but we've already discussed this about half an hour ago. Yeah. It's the Muslims, actually, the most demonized, despised community of all, because they still keep the traditional values. It's the woman who recognises her most precious vocation in life, and it's an inestimable vocation. It's not some kind of, oh my God, I've got to have babies. To have the next generation of children is a very honourable thing, and the man goes out to work. Now, there's no prohibition in Islam, trust me, of the woman having a job. After all, Muhammad's wife, the first wife, Khadija, was a prosperous businesswoman, and he was faithfully married to her for 25 years until she passed away. She was no shrinking varlet who walked behind her husband like some Saudi Arabian nightmare scenario. She was a strong, powerful woman who had a business and had social standing. So in Islam, you can.
Yeah.
And she was the first Muslim, I think, the first one, maybe Ali, or I forget it was Khadija or Ali, who was the very first Muslim to say the Shahada. So these are credible role models for women as businessmen. But the traditional values is, as we say, and they're embodied in the Muslim communities. I don't know about the Sikh community, maybe they are there too. So actually, ironically, the most despised community, we as English people, speaking as Englishmen now, can learn actually our own forgotten values that are still being maintained and lived by Muslims, these despised minority from abroad. Yeah, well, because they are actually our British values. We go back to the Victorian era, and in fact, the entire history, of the British people, we have always lived like that until the 1960s, and back until the 1990s, when we had this complete change, and men and women are now identical, interchangeable, just the same. There's no biological differences, no genetic issues here whatsoever. A man and woman are the same, which is it defies science, it defies common sense, it defies what we can see with our own eyes, and it defies
your heart as well. I don't understand.
And the thing is,
that's a controversial thing. Look to the Muslims for your salvation.
And the thing is, I know Muslims are going to start overjoying on this, but I've said it before, that one of the things I respect about Islam is the traditional values. I'm a very, very conservative in my views.
Traditionalist?
Yeah, I'm a traditionalist. I believe in the family. I think motherhood is sanctimony. I think abortion is wrong unless somebody's been raped. And so the civilization of Muslims in terms of the traditional values was British values.
Yeah,
that's
until 80 years ago.
Exactly.
And now, because that's gone, you have young men. One of the things I've always agreed with Islam is that they have a good understanding of a man and a woman, what their roles are. Now, when you remove those roles and you say they're identical, then you have the problem with men who don't feel like men and are committing suicide or depression.
I'd have to
and having a massive problem.
Just again for the sake of argument.
Devil's advocate.
So we can all, again, the problem with tradition is that if it was working out so well, why did it change? And why is that being adopted by so many people as the way to go forward? It's not a question of right or wrong. It means that there is something within the tradition that is not pragmatic or failing, hence the change. Now, the change...
Women see the equity. Different life.
Yeah. Or more to the point, it's marketed so that women can see the equity. I'm going to tell you one thing.
But again, no, but that's the thing. Marketing will only work if you're
women. I know 40-year women that are in their industry that have not taken days off, that have not had children, and they're sitting in their room, you know, with all this beautiful veneer of life on them, and genuinely they are not happy. They're not happy. You understand? They are not happy.
The women?
Yeah, the women. Yeah, they are as miserable as hell. I don't want to be nasty. I see
that's
some of
very
them.
anecdotal, whereas what this gentleman is saying is not anecdotal.
And they need that. It's been marketed so that this family value is seen as a bad thing. And to be honest, look, I say this as an atheist. When I look at a woman, I don't see her any less worth of a man. I really don't. And to be honest with you, I despise when people do. Yeah. But they've got their roles. Let us have our roles. You understand me? And that's what's eroded in today's
And this is why the West will fall at some point.
It will.
It could take 100 years, 200 years, or 300
the thing
years,
is,
because they've lost that traditional value.
Exactly. But my argument is, both from a purely materialist point of view and from a religious point of view, is that it's doomed to fail, this Western idea. It will on the grounds of evolutionary psychology, because we're hardwired genetically to be different. Men and women are different. That's my first point. So on that basis, our biology would do it. And secondly, on religious basis, because we are made by God. Well, we are made by God, as we believe. I think as Sikhs and Muslims and Christians believe this. Also, we're made by God in a certain way. We can rebel against that, but it's not going to last because it's not who we are. It's not our nature. So it's an experiment that will fail.
It wasn't rude.
That's my argument.
I admire you for doing that. You remind me of my nephew trying to resolve things.
Don't you think it's a little bit more malleable than that? It's like, I get it that this is how we are now, that the conditions that led to where we are today promoted this kind of stratification between men and women. But that doesn't mean that our actions can't change that if we continue to perform them. So we can enforce change in ourselves with enough time, and we're looking at it now.
You are right, because evolution, we can actually. There is
There's
a complex interaction between culture and nature and evolution.
Exactly.
And we, in a sense, can direct evolution by our choice. No, you are right. But that is a future project, and we're not there yet. And I think that our evolutionary heritage is so entrenched in our genetics on a whole range of issues, the male and female, in terms of our feelings, our attitudes, our choices, our physiology, and our morphology, and so on. All these are different. That is not going to be. It's not going to happen in the next 100 years. We're talking here thousands of years. Because how long has a species been around? We've been 100,000 years of evolution, and suddenly since 1967 or something, we're supposed to be a different. It's not going to happen like that. Which is why we have this problem with men.
Let's have a
down.
talk. He's a young guy. He's 22, 23.
Sorry,
the
you were going to say
age group that we're talking about.
I don't know who said it, but I found it very disturbing. You said that the reason why young men, maybe if I misheard you, are committing suicide at the alarming rates that they are is because women want feminism?
No, we're saying that the men's role, traditional role that men have had for millennium, is being eroded. So if a lot of men, I'm talking for myself as well, because I thought, I'm talking about this because it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and today's the last day, and I've suffered from depression. And one of the things that I'm out of it now, which is why I'm here. I'm getting the hate. That's what gets me out of depression. And what it is,
it's unusual therapy.
The more hate you
don't try this at home, folks.
The more hate you give me, the more I grow.
Go and see your doctor. Don't get hate.
But that works for me though. So what I'm trying to say to you is that a traditional values of a man feeling like a man. When you don't feel like a man, and women are telling you, oh, you're nothing, or if you behave like a normal man, like little kids are quite boisterous. I'm trying to explain to you. When I was at school in the 80s, kids are beating each other up in the classes sometimes. Chairs are being thrown. That's what boys do sometimes.
I'm okay with that.
But nowadays, if you see a boy doing that, they chuck him on Ritalin or something, and so they're trying to emasculate the men. And I think that's what's causing a lot of problems with men between the age of 16 and like 28, where they're not allowing them to be men.
Actually,
so that's what nothing against women. I think women are equal to men, but women are women and men are men.
I agree. Actually, that does have an effect. In fact, a great deal of the young men who committed mass shootings apparently were on psychic drugs,
psychedelic.
Psychedelic. Well,
psychotropic.
Yeah, they ended up hating women.
Yeah,
rather different.
These very high concentrated.
But I'm going to ask you, why did it end up? I mean, they had a lot of reasons why. They had a lot of reasons to do why they did, but they chose one specific reason to highlight, and it was that they hated women.
Yeah.
And the reason they probably hated women, in my opinion, is that they felt emasculated because of
I find
society.
that very bizarre. I think I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of issues, and I've heard this from a lot of young men. Is just the fact that and this saying that a lot of men say is hey, you seem like a nice guy, I'll give you a chance. One word said by no woman ever. And I find that very disturbing. No, but I think that's stupid. So you're angry at a woman because she rejects you?
Do you mind me asking you one thing? Why do you go out? My sincere apologies. Now, look, I remember what I did when I was a youngster. But why are you trying to climb up this social economic ladder? Why are you trying to get into this lovely BMW? Why are you trying to I'll be honest with you, I'll give you my answer. It was to get into girls' knickers. Look, I'm not going to beat about the bush about it. That's the reason why I did it.
You said something secondly there.
I think there are other issues like
don't go there.
Censor.
I think there are other issues that contributed to it. I think there's the first one. You made a very good point about boys being boys and they put them on
Ritalin and
stuff. It's actually like uppers, and they're even more powerful than methamphetamine. I've heard.
And more addictive.
More addictive. And when they go off them, they go down. And they go, crazy. They just become unbelievably depressed. I learned this from a YouTuber named ContraPoint. Very smart woman now. She's trans, but anyway, sorry. What was the point? Obviously, but I think that
why we do things.
I believe that there are other things like these pickup artists where men learn to talk to girls and this and where getting a girl drunk isn't rape and it kind of is.
That's fair enough. I'm just saying.
I think we're swaying on the subject matter. What we're trying to say is that if you want to talk, you can. But
sorry, but
we have a patriarchy here, though. I'm only joking.
Sorry, no, let me.
But the thing is that
the women aren't getting.
Yeah, we will.
I didn't finish.
But before you arrived to speak, by the way,
clarify one thing. When we're talking about women, we're not talking about men hating women because they don't get on dates. We're talking about men feeling emasculated because the normal role of a man being the breadwinner and being the kind of head of the household and stuff like that has been eroded.
Content over everything. From young to Benjamin.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to
And what I want to do later, what
I've already said in my view the reason that's a problem, I think it is a problem for all of us, is that in the West, by which I mean the United States and Western Europe, Central Europe and Eastern Europe, that attitude has resulted in the catastrophic demographic, by demographic I mean population, of the population birth rate, incredible demographic decline of the population in the West, in Germany and Scandinavia and England and America and so on. And one of the consequences of what that means is we have to suck in huge amounts of third world immigration.